Some more good questions. I love when you guys give questions. So the question's about how do you tell if the game's fun or how do you make sure it's not dull? Right? Both same flavors of the same question. So first, words like fun and cool are bad words. I'm fine you brought it up. It's a classic kind of thing. Because, well, first of all, games are often more than just fun. Sometimes they're an expression of skill. Like, are you having fun when you're really good at CSGO or Counter-Strike 2 or whatever Counter-Strike's called these days? Or are you feeling accomplished? And that might be fun, but it also might be a different emotion, right? There's actually a good talk about, or a paper on 7 different ways of kind of expression in games. And it's all not just about difficulty, and it's all not just about fun. There's like a whole range of, sometimes you just feel really good with your abilities in a game, and sometimes you want other things out of it. So, you always have to understand what your game is and what you want to be testing for. Now, testing for fun or not being bored or dull, is sometimes you have to watch the player. You can tell boredom, you can tell frustration, like those kind of things surface. One of the most horrific experiences of my life was we had just agreed to get hired at Valve, and Eric had left and I had some time. And so I came into the office and I was playing Half-Life 2 before it was released. And I got stuck. In the boat section when you have to go through one of the truck containers. But no one was watching except for Gabe Knoll, who was sitting behind me. And he's like, yeah, a lot of people get stuck here. So I didn't feel so bad, but that was horrible. But you can tell I'm stuck. I'm frustrated, right? That's an easy one. But fun, we don't often try to test for those kind of things because there's a point you have to say, I'm a game designer. I know what I'm doing when I'm making this game. And there's no magic of being a game designer that I can tell if someone's having fun or not. I can ask them those questions. I can see it on their face. But it's really about having to understand what you're creating is allowing for that or allowing for accomplishment or whatever the emotion you want to have. And then understanding what more concrete things can you test for. And I know if you make mobile games, you're probably losing your mind now because you're insistent that you can test for everything. I've been to a lot of mobile game events where normal games have a design track often where they're talking about design. They might have a business track. Mobile games have 2 tracks always, user acquisition and monetization. That's why mobile games feel the way they do, because they don't decide as design, which I think design would have a lot to do with both of those. The better companies understand that, but I won't get into it. All right. But so it's just really hard to test for fun. And it's really is this cool? Cool you can't test for. Cool you can't quantify for. And that's if you were going to tell someone, make the level cool. That's not a good goal, right? Make the level understandable, make the level difficult, make the level easy, right? Those are things you can quantify and understand. Cool, you can't. Cool, those kind of attributes have to come from the person. Why you hire somebody who's done this before because they have an understanding of this and you have an understanding of the quality that they expect. Because here's the really horrible thing. Now, Starfield wasn't my kind of game, but Starfield is successful. You can beat it up all you want, but it's sold, right? It's one of the most high-selling games on Steam, and God knows what it did on Game Pass and Xbox. Okay, but it's a game about space and all its excitement, but yet it starts with you mining, and to me, it starts really dull, and it starts a lot of explanation because they're setting up the world that you're going to live in and you're going to play inside of. If you're making a new game and nobody knows who you are, you can't get away with that. Bethesda can get away with that because people are going to be like, oh, it's okay. It's okay. It gets fun after 10 hours. Think about how many games this last year got that little phrase of oh, it's fun after 5 hours. Now, if you don't know about the game, if you have no idea of who the developers are you gonna put in those 5 hours, those 10 hours? You might not. And so for new developers or for unknown developers, you can't get away with some of the testing and that experience of what's happening, right? Think about here on YouTube, most of my views come from subscribers. And so people have an understanding of what they are. So I can actually put a little bumper up that's hey, I'm Chet. I'm going to come, show you some stuff about games. And that's okay. I can't do that on TikTok because almost all of my traffic comes from the algorithm, and people just tune out right away on that. And so you have to understand that as a game designer, right? And I see a lot of, and I've talked with a lot of, and I've helped a lot of, and I've played a lot of, and tested a lot of, and given feedback on a lot of first-person puzzle games. And you can't recreate Portal, first of all. And second of all, you have this problem that people don't want to give you the benefit of the doubt. They don't care about your mystery. They don't care about your story. They don't care about you. Like, they don't care. And so what you're testing for there is you've got to test to grab them right away. When we first launched Anacrusis, we launched it really rough. I admitted to that, right? In early access. And on Xbox in particular, where we had a lot of players come in with xCloud, where they would just jump in and jump out. It wasn't about the game was fun. It wasn't about the game was dull. We had to grab them quickly because it was something like 95% of the players left within the first 10 minutes. That's a really bad stat. And so we did a bunch of work to make sure that when you first jumped in, you had an understanding what was going on in the world, what was going on with your character, how to play, and all of that, coming with the game instructor and all of that stuff. And we turned it around. And in a few months, it was 95% of the players played more than the first 10 minutes. And then it became just noise of like what that really meant. So that's why fun isn't a good thing to test for. Dull kind of is, like fatiguing, boring. But like it's really hard, and those are really subjective. And that's why you often go to the, hey, if they can understand this, the rest of this inside of here, we understand those levers, we understand the game, and we're game designers, and this is what we're making, right? And every so often, you just need to make that leap and say you're a game designer, and this is the experience you want people to have. Maybe they'll like it, maybe they won't. And yeah, it's really hard to decipher out. And I mean, maybe some people are just better at getting all the stats than I, or other places I've worked. But in general, those are just really hard things to find out, right? But you can find out the other things around it and then make some guesses. And then, I think this is where you can start getting feedback and understanding what's going on by just watching or listening to players talk about it. And this is why often in forums, I'm a fan of this as well, is where you don't respond and you don't engage with the community in a direct way when they're talking about certain things, because you want them just to talk back and forth and kind of solve the problem together, or understand the problem, or talk about the problem. Because then they're going to talk about it more, they're going to talk about it differently, right? They're going to talk about it in a way that they don't expect you to solve the problem, because they're not talking to you, they're talking to each other, and they're talking about their experience in it. And that's where you can learn a lot about how players perceive your game and understand it. But of course, that means the game's already out, which means you already may have screwed up, and yeah. But yeah. So it's a good question in that there often is the trap that I think people fall for, and testing is not necessarily on its own the way to look at that. And you have to have some understanding of what you're building and what you want the players to feel and experience out of it. And then, yeah, I mean, it is always a tough one of when you hand somebody the game and you're watching them. Rarely, I think you learn what you think you're going to learn. You're going to learn the things that you're going to test, but you also are always surprised by what you learn and what they say and what they experience in a way that's different from you, that gives you insight, right? Because it's not about just bug testing and like, are they stuck here or whatever. Somebody else brought that up as well. Like when you play test somebody's thing, play it like you would play it, right? Because that's important, that's valuable. Playing it just to find the bugs isn't. That's a different thing. And also a little tip for every game developer: learn to play with your default controls. Just force yourself to learn to play the game that way, because that's how most of your players are going to play with it and have an understanding of it. I've struggled and yelled at this with people on my team, or younger developers who played with some really obscure, like they run with the space bar or something. Nobody else is going to play that way. You're not going to have the experience that they're going to have. You're not going to understand what's going on, and you're not going to be able to tweak it, right? And that's all stuff that doesn't come out again of the fun, cool. It's all part of you being a game designer and understanding. So all right, I'm babbling and going off on a tangent there. But yeah, it's an interesting question of like testing for fun and watching for fun, because I don't think it's really the thing you test for.